Alright, so new music. I'm becoming a picky little bitch with these videos. I mean, I've recorded this one like 6 times now because I just can't seem to get all the ideas that I'm trying to put into the video down in a way that I want them to be. And I keep thinking like maybe I should start writing them down and have like a structure, but I really don't want that to be this channel. It's just meant to be some thoughts. So I'm going to try and cover it as much as I can, but the topic for this video, I have a feeling that the title, I'm going to put it as "Can you love your life?" The short answer is yes. People do it all the time. You can absolutely love your life. Could you specifically love your life? That's the big question. And I come from a place in my youth, which I'll talk to more on this channel, but I come from a childhood where I didn't love my life. I didn't love life at all. In fact, I resented it. I resented existence. And nowadays I find myself more and more getting into the mind state of loving life. And I guess I wanted to talk about what loving your life means as a concept, what it means for you, and how and why I got to there. Look, I'm not going to be trying to give any self-help to be like, this is how you achieve it, because every person is different. I just want to speak to say I have achieved it, or I believe that I have, and I'm constantly improving and always learning new things. But in terms of loving my life, I'm starting to get there on a day-to-day basis, not just on a good occasion to good occasion basis, and then back to either numbness or depression. So I mean, the first question is, what does loving your life mean, right? And I think it means two things. I think it means appreciating and being grateful for the things that you receive, even the misfortunes sometimes, because sometimes misfortune is the greatest teacher or the greatest guide into the next phase of your life. And then the other part of it is creating a life you love. Creating a life you have the ability to love. If you're, and obviously not every circumstance is going to be as easy as like, well, you just need to, like Jordan Peterson might say, you just need to go clean your room and everything will be fine, like it's not necessarily that always, like I've met people who are homeless, especially without extra assistance. It's very difficult to get off the streets, but this is more for the people who feel like they're teetering on the edge, or feel like they might have the ability to start restructuring their mind. That's kind of more what I'm speaking to here. So loving your life is, it's about being grateful for the things that you have, but also striving for the things that you want. And that's what I think loving it truly is, and caring for your life, right? Like you wouldn't not shower 5 days in a row because that's unhygienic. Well, some people might, and I'm not judging, but most of us, we're gonna have a shower at least once a day, maybe every second day if it's a weekend or we're on holidays or sick, but you'll want to have a shower because that's self-care and looking after yourself and whatnot. And so loving your life should kind of be like that as well. But how to love your life, well, I mean, that varies for everyone. And I'll speak to how I got to loving life, which was purely out of necessity. I could not keep living the way that I was living and have that on my conscience. So for me, I'm kind of lucky, because there was plenty of times where I could have made a change, but I never had the motivation or never wanted to. But I was lucky that I reached a point where it was just like, no, you're done. And I've had that multiple times in my life, I had that with depression. Like one day it was so much just fucking with me that eventually I just went, no, I'm not gonna be depressed. I'm not dealing with that shit. And then of course my mental illness manifested in other ways. So I got rid of the depression, and then I became incredibly angry. Always having these huge outbursts, crazy pent up anger. eventually I had to be like, that's it, I'm not being angry anymore. And then I got hell paranoid, and I had to deal with that same thing. Eventually it was taking over so much of my life, I just said no. And that's kind of what I did with loving my life, but instead of it just being like no to hating my life, I found myself more embracing the actual idea of loving my life, not just wanting the opposite of it, which is what it was like when I just quit depression. It was more like, no, I just don't want this anymore, I want the opposite. But not having love for life was a bit different, because I didn't feel like I was hindered not loving life or being a bit cynical, you know. I just felt like, well, what's there to love? Like, I'll do cool shit and have fun and have a good time, but there's nothing to love. And just recently I've started realizing that it's what I call the grass is always greener philosophy, or anyone calls it, but that's just what I call it. Grass is greener philosophy, right? Whatever the fuck's over there is always more appealing, because you're used to what's here, you've had it for ages, you want to check that out. You go across that fence and you're there, it's the same thing. So that fact almost makes it seem pointless to love your life, because what's the difference? Loving it, hating it, it's just boring or shit or whatever's going on, you know, or it'll just constantly be good maybe. But fortunately life is a bit more chaotic than that, and it likes to keep us on our toes. So that's the idea of loving your life to me, is the same way the grass is always greener on the other side, is the same way anything in life you could love or hate. You know, I could hate my past because it has put me so far back compared to where someone of like my intelligence and composure and whatnot would be out in the world having lived a normal life. So I could see myself as disadvantaged, or as having, you know, being held back in life, and I would resent that, and I thought that for ages. And I still think it, but I don't resent it. I love that. I love the fact that I can be 24 and still feel like I'm 19 or 20, and still have that youthful energy, and still be able to learn and grow like someone younger than me would. And that's something I want to just continue to take on board in my life. So loving your life is part of like seeing those things that maybe like they're not necessarily good always, but they might have led to good things. So you learn to be grateful for where you've ended up thanks to the situation, and where you can go from that situation, as opposed to hating the fact that it happened to you, which that's a hard thing to get over, especially with some kinds of trauma and some events that can cause trauma. And I'm not going to deny that or speak down on anyone's trauma and just say, hey, stop being mentally ill. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can do that. You can do that. And there's different severities of mental illness, right? Someone who's severely schizophrenic, well, they're even just going to struggle in therapy. So they're not just going to be able to switch off the schizophrenia. But also there is reports of people who have used that to their advantage and changed their schizophrenia. So voices that are telling them, you know, kill yourself and you're nothing, and like all this kind of stuff. They managed to turn those voices into positive affirmations. Now they have an all right time. So you imagine your brain functions like that anyway. You're just not schizophrenic, so you're not hearing voices, but your brain's doing that same erratic thing. You know, imagine you meet like a real cute girl, but you've got like a proclivity to anxiety, and imagine that manifests as schizophrenia or voices. Those voices are going to be saying like, oh, she thinks you're ugly, like, you know, oh, you just did something really like, you know, awkward, like this chick's going to think you're an idiot, like, oh, look at you making a fool of yourself. That's what those voices are going to say, because that's what you're feeding. But if you slowly train yourself to be grateful and see the positives in things, then instead when you meet that cute girl, those schizophrenic voices, they start saying, oh man, she's really cute, like, oh, that was something funny you said, she's laughing. They're encouraging you, they're helping you. And that's what your brain can do for you, but you have to restructure. You have to sit down with it and start not picking it apart and pulling out every little component and saying, that's wrong, I need to switch it. That's a very Western approach to psychology. I'm more interested in the Buddhists, who would probably see the brain more as a whole, Like, they obviously respect and identify that there's individual parts, but you can't just be pulling them out and apart and then saying that this is going to, like, this will fix all your problems. You need your whole brain working in conjunction towards a singular goal, which should, with whatever your goal is, but then you just use these tactics like loving life and employing care to your life in order to see those goals achieved. So, you know, I'm incredibly fucking ranty, like I talk all the time. I'm not trying to beat myself up over that, right? I'm trying to be grateful and say, well, hey, if I talk all the time, maybe I can make this YouTube videos and speak and get that energy out of me instead of worrying that I'm talking too much to other people. I get to have my little rant to the camera. So that to me is what loving your life is about. It's not just about being like, I'm this, I love it. It's about being like, I'm this, what's the value of that? You know what I mean? Because, look, if you love something, it's because you see value in it. Not even necessarily value for yourself, just value in general. You have to value your life so that you can put that love into it the same way you would that puppy. Because as soon as you don't value that puppy or that kid or that spouse, then they're not receiving any love. And then you don't receive any in return, right? So even though if you have a kid, that's unconditional love, or it should be, it isn't always. But if you have a kid, that's unconditional love, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a value to each person in that relationship. That doesn't mean that you're not both giving and receiving something. And that should be your interaction with your life, is you're putting something into it, it's giving something back, it's giving you something, you're giving it something back. And just this, to quote Russell Brand, it's just giving and receiving and giving and receiving. And that's a good way to approach your life. And look, there's still going to be shit days. There's still going to be bad things going on. All you need to do is look around and you see bad shit everywhere. And that'll make it hard to love life. But only if you focus on those things. If you focus on, you know, how beautiful that cloud up there looks today, or how grateful I am that I woke up at 9:30 instead of 12 at midday, or the fact that there's a nice amount of trees around my house even though I live in the center of the city, you know. Because I could just be complaining that, like, oh, you know, the aircon makes too much noise, or, you know, oh, I don't like this brick. But why would I do that? Because I want to love my life. So, can you love your life? Yes. Should you love your life? I'd say so. Will you love your life? That's up to you. Anyway, just some musings.